be back with you, and I want to extend a special welcome to Commodore Rob Schuyler of the Santa Cruz Yacht Club over here. Frank Van Diggelen, Dr. Frank Van Diggelen, is originally from South Africa. He has a PhD in electrical engineering from Cambridge, which I suppose was about the time where he met his wife. He said she's from Scotland and he's from South Africa, and they met in the middle. You can follow that in England, okay. He is presently a Broadcom fellow. Broadcom manufactures chips for GPS devices, including your phones. He's a consulting professor at Stanford University, where he teaches a graduate course on GPS, so pay attention, you might learn something. He's had navigation as his focus for an entire career. Became a navigation officer at the age of 19 in the South African Navy, and that was before he went to Cambridge. What kind of sailing do you do, Frank?
I sail with Rob on a Santa Cruz 27.
Sails with the Commodore on a Santa Cruz 27. Makes sense to me. Please welcome Dr. Frank Van Diggelen.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me. As Kimball said, I'm a sailor and I'm a GPS system designer. I work for Broadcom, and we make chips that go primarily into cell phones, GPS chips. They're going at the rate of about 200 million a year, so a lot of them. And we test these things thoroughly. 52 weeks a year, we'll be testing the latest hardware and software. And coincidentally, the way we test is against a reference system that turns out to be the exact same GPS systems that they have in America's Cup boats. So it turns out we have thousands of hours of data showing how what's in your cell phone compares to what's in America's Cup boat. And so I'm going to share some of that with you, and we can start to look into the questions of what that could mean for club sailors. So here we have a big boat and a small boat, and what's inside the big boat is this. This is a combined GPS inertial measurement unit. That's what it looks like. That's what's inside the JC boat. Big thing. And that top dish, that's the GPS antenna. That alone costs $1,500, that antenna. And this is what they call survey-grade GPS. This is because land surveyors use it primarily for measuring positions and doing surveys to centimeter accuracy. And if you look out next time you see a survey crew on the road, you might see one of these up on a tripod, and they're using GPS to do a survey to centimeters. And then the GPS and the IMU is integrated in this box. So an IMU stands for Inertial Measurement Unit. That's something that comprises gyroscopes and accelerometers. They come in 4 grades. There's consumer grade, industrial grade, tactical grade, and what's called navigation grade. Navigation grade IMU you'll only find on submarines and spacecraft, and they usually cost over $1 million. One of those here. The next one down is the tactical grade. You'll find those on fighter aircraft and AC boats, and reference systems for testing against. That's why I have one, because it's what we use. So what you get out of that is, with the gyroscope, you get very precise heading. So out of the whole system, instead of just getting position and velocity, you get position, track, speed, and heading. Heading, of course, different from track on a boat because of leeway. So that's what you have in America's Cup boat. $25,000 for that system. So on your boat, you might have a cell phone, such as it. I'm taking it out just for a moment. I know it should go away. and now I'll concentrate about what's inside of the cell phone from the point of view of location. So those are the pieces inside. We've got a few of them here. The antenna is a tiny little piece of metal up there in the corner. You can cover it up with a dime. I've placed a dime there on the picture for you to see. It's actually like the edge of a dime. You could peel off the edge of a dime and put it there. That's what the antenna inside a cell phone looks like. Costs much less than a dime, close to a penny for that antenna. So think about it. Right? That makes a big difference. This antenna in the cell phone works a lot worse than a nice big antenna. Okay, I'll put that down. The GPS chip is also tiny. Got a bunch of them here. I'm going to hand these out so you can see it up close. GPS chip in most cell phones is about 2 millimeters on the side. So laminated, if you're on a car, I'll hand them around. You've got to see that up close. See.
That's the GPS chip.
There you go. So that's what's in your cell phone.
Basically, the radio signal comes in. You can insert it later in the town.
Hand those around.
There's the line.
Now, unlike with the antenna, small size on the chip does not necessarily connote inferior performance. Chips get smaller by a factor of 2 every 2 years with the same performance, and that's Moore's law. And it's just the size of the transistors in the chip just gets smaller, so that they get smaller and smaller and smaller. When the first GPS satellite was launched, which was in 1978, if we could have made that chip back then, it would have been 260,000 times bigger. It would have been this big. Of course, no such thing ever existed, but the point is that what that chip can do was not even imagined when GPS was begun. Unfortunately, most of what it does is overcome the inferiority of that tiny little antenna. But that's not all that it does. It also does have some very good characteristics and good accuracy, which you'll see. So that's the GPS chip. There's also an oscillator chip that generates a steady frequency that drives the radios inside the GPS chip. And then there is an IMU system inside your cell phone. There's a single chip gyro accelerometer that really does a similar thing to what this tactical grade IMU does. Measures angles and acceleration. Of course, it's consumer grade, something called MEMS. MEMS stands for Micro Electromechanical System. And basically what that is a chip where they're making use of the mechanical properties of the silicon as well as the electrical properties. And in plain English, that means there's tiny little moving parts on that chip, vibrating part. There'll be parts that vibrate, and by designing them in a certain way, they can sense when the chip rotates or when it accelerates. And so you can get something like heading out of the chip, and that's what those things are for. And you can also get heading with respect to magnetic north. There's a MEMS magnetometer inside your cell phones. So in a way, you actually have more things in the cell phone than you have on the AC boat, but not at the same level of precision. So those are the pieces that go in that I'm going to talk about and show you data from. Everything below the line is to scale, except those parts. If I put it to scale, it looks like that. And the price that your cell phone manufacturer paid to put all of that in the phone was about $5. Okay. So what did this thing do to justify its high price? What does it do? Well, one of the things it does is it supports this system. This is what we've been watching on television for the last 2 months. And there's the overlays, the graphical overlays on the video image. So this is, of course, the LiveLine system that Stan Honey developed and runs. He was going to be here, but he has to catch a flight to London this afternoon, and he sends his apologies. And this is, for my money, the best television sports coverage we've seen in a long time. So even though Stan's not here, I want to do it. So that's one of the things that this system does, and which is show the boundaries for an AC race where there are boundaries, show the advantage lines, show the lay lines, the start line at the start, the location of the boats. Now the thing to think about when you look at this picture is that most of what you're looking at is nothing to do with the boat. It's to do with the course and the wind. And so that's important, and I'm going to come back to that later. The system that produces this as a block diagram like this, or a cartoon picture like this, in the bottom left you've got this GPS inertial measurement system on the boat. It gives you 2 centimeter position accuracy and angle accuracy of 1/10 of a degree, 0.1 of a degree. What's in the helicopter that's doing the video is the same kind of GPS, but a higher end inertial measurement unit that gives 1/100 of a degree accuracy. And the reason for that is that a helicopter became quite far away. It can be well over a mile away from the action. And so a slight error in angle through that long lever arm would lead to a large error in where those lines show up. And plus, if it moved around, those lines would look like they were moving. So the really really expensive thing, 150,000 for that inertial unit that goes on the helicopter, it only has to happen once in any system, and I'm going to come back to this later as we start talking about consumer systems. So, and remember that most of what you're looking at is not actually, the boat doesn't have to be there to show you most of that stuff. Most of that information on the screen is to do with the course and the wind. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the GPS technology that goes on in here and in your cell phone.